Hello everyone and welcome into Coach Craig's Sports. This is the NBA DFS Core Pick video for Monday, December 1st. If you join me for the very first time, first of all, welcome in. Second of all, this is how today's video will be structured. We'll be going over my core picks for both DraftKings and FanDuel. It's going to be one player at each position, so point guard, shooting guard, small forward, power forward, and center. We're going to have two slightly different slates as DraftKings has 6 games in total and FanDuel has the full 9 games. And we do have 5 teams on back-to-backs. That's going to be the Los Angeles Lakers, Atlanta Hawks, Cleveland Cavaliers, Houston Rockets, and Utah Jazz. And with that being said, I'll have my early morning injury report posted right away in the morning. I will not have the injury reports for the 5 teams on the back-to-back initially, but I will have them posted later on in the day. And then I'll also be posting my updated core about 20 to 30 minutes prior to lock. That will be left as a pinned comment. If there's no changes to the core at that point in time, we'll simply leave a pinned comment that says no changes to the core at this point in time. If there's any other additional changes beyond that point, we'll leave them as a reply to that pinned comment as well. And then last but not least, I will be posting as many of the starting lineups as I can get to throughout the evening down in that comment section as well. So definitely make sure that you are checking up down there so that you do have the most up-to-date and relevant information, especially as we do head into lock. But without further ado, we'll get right into it. We're going to start off on the DraftKings side. We're going to start off at that point guard position, and I ultimately ended up paying up for James Harden here. It comes in at $9,800. So we're looking for at least 49 out of him to pay off at 5 times value. Currently averaging just under 52 so far in the season. Goes against Miami Heat. Might be a little bit tougher matchup since the Heat are a team that usually likes to play a little bit slower and are a little bit better defensively. However, they're not quite as good this year as they've been in past years, but still definitely do like James Harden in this matchup overall. Currently have him projected for 52. He's had at least 51 points in 5 out of the last 6 games that he's played, so he's been doing really well as of late. Do expect that trend to continue. Then we move down to shooting guard with Anthony Black, comes in at $5,700. So we're looking for at least 29 fantasy points out of him to pay off at 5 times value. He's been playing really well as of late. You can't tell it by the fantasy points per game average on the season. Currently still under 25 fantasy points per game. But he's been a solid piece for them, especially since the absence of Paolo Banchero. Currently haven't projected for 30 in this matchup. He's at least 30 fantasy points in 3 out of the last 5 games that he's played. So definitely a pretty safe floor there. A little bit of upside at the same time as well. And he is a pick that could very much change if we do get some other additional value opening up throughout the day. And then we're going to move down to small forward with Zachary Ricochet of the Atlanta Hawks. Comes in at $4,700. So we're looking for at least 24 out of him to pay off at 5 times value. Currently averaging about 21.5 so far in the season. And like I said, what seems like a million times with him this year, sometimes he gets the minutes, sometimes he doesn't. He's been banged up at times this year. It's been a very up and down second season. But going against the Detroit Pistons, it's a matchup that I do like, and I do think that his length will be very useful for us. So I do think that he'll be out there on the court more times than not. Do currently have him projected for about 26, 27 in this matchup. Could have a little bit upside for more. Could definitely have some downside for less at the same time as well. And then we're going to move down to power forward with Chris Middleton of the Washington Wizards. Comes in at $4,800, so we're looking for 24 out of him to pay off at 5 times value. Currently averaging 22 so far in the season. Been doing a little bit better as of late as he does have at least 25 points in 4 out of the last 5 games that he has played. And I do currently have him projected for 27 in this matchup. If Alex Sarr ultimately ends up missing, could be some additional shots and usage to go around at the same time as well. Then we move down to center with Jay Huff. He's also eligible at power forward on the DraftKings side. Comes in at $5,000, and he wasn't their starting lineup the most recent game, or that might have been 2 games ago. They, again, kind of rotating those centers just in general. But he's been playing really well, getting more minutes as of late. We're looking for 25 out of him to pay off at 5 times value. And he's currently averaging just under 19 so far in the season. A little bit tougher matchup going against the Cleveland Cavaliers, but they're on the back-to-back, so maybe they rest a couple players in this matchup overall. So could have some additional upside there. And I do currently have him projected for 28 in this matchup. He's had at least 25 in 3 out of the last 4 games that he has played. So it seems like a relatively safe player, at least early on the day. And he does offer a little bit of upside at the same time as well. If Alex Sarr ultimately ends up getting ruled out, this probably is going to pivot over to Marvin Bagley as long as he's in that starting lineup. But with that being said, if you go with the 5 players that I do currently have listed here, you have $20,000 remaining, just under $6,700 remaining per player. So looks a little bit like a balance build type of day to start the day. Obviously, we'll see if any other value does ultimately end up opening up throughout the day, especially with the 5 teams that are on back-to-backs just in general. But with that being said, we'll get moved over to FanDuel and talk about my core picks over there as well. So on the FanDuel side, we're going to start off at the point guard position. I'm going to go with Cooper Flag here. Been playing a little bit better as of late. He comes in at $6,800. Looking for 34 out of him to pay off at 5 times value. Currently averaging just over 33 so far in the season. Goes against the Denver Nuggets. Kind of a hit or miss matchup there just in general, but I think his size and his playmaking has been a bigger role for him as of late. So I think he does have the opportunity to succeed in this matchup. And with that being said, I do currently have him projected for 38. He's had at least 44 fantasy points in 3 out of the last 5 games that he's played. So definitely some decent upside to be had there at the same time as well. A little bit downside, but definitely willing to risk it on today's slate. Obviously, there could be another value that opens up later on the day that pushes him off, but he is eligible at point guard, shooting guard, and small forward. So definitely some versatility there at the same time as well. And then we're going to move down to shooting guard. We're going to go Chris Middleton coming in at $4,800. We're looking for at least 24 out of him to pay off at 5 times value. And he's currently averaging about 21.5 so far in the season. Goes against the Milwaukee Bucks. Could be a pretty favorable matchup there. It is going against his former team. So if you are into that revenge game narrative, currently having projected for 26, 27 in this matchup. He's had at least 24 points in 4 out of the last 5 games that he has played. And if Alex Sarr ultimately ends up missing in this game, could be some additional shots and uses to go around, which could benefit a guy like Chris Middleton just in general. Then we move down to small forward with Kawhi Leonard. Comes in at $8,500. Looking for 43 out of him to pay off at 5 times value. He's been back the last 4 games. He's kind of been capped off at 28 minutes, so that is a little bit of a concern. But I still think he is a relatively safe play here. It's going to be a pretty attractive matchup for him going against Miami Heat. You know, the Miami Heat play a little bit slower, usually better defensively, but I don't think they really have a guy that matches up too well against Kawhi Leonard in this matchup, just in general. So if his minutes are a little bit more, if he's still very effective in those minutes, I definitely have a strong feeling that he could have some serious upside in this matchup. And with that being said, currently I'm projected for 44, might have a little bit of upside for even more than that. He's had at least 42 points in the last 2 games that he's played, so hopefully he maintains some of that efficiency as well as playing some additional minutes. And with that being said, maybe there's another value that pops up at small forward today that makes Kawhi Leonard look a little less optimal, and then maybe pay up for like another star player that maybe looks a little bit safer just in general. This is always going to be an option. But with that being said, we'll get moved down to power forward with Royce O'Neal coming in at $5,000. Looking for 25 out of him. He is currently averaging just under 25 so far on the season. Goes against the Los Angeles Lakers. They're on the back-to-back, but it is a matchup that favors him pretty well. He's been playing really well as of late, so definitely do like that upside that he could potentially have. And with that being said, he's had at least 25 points in the last 3 games that he's played. I do currently have him projected for 27 in this matchup, currently averaging just under 25 so far in the season, but I definitely do like his upside in this game just in general. And then last but not least, we're going to go down to Nikolai Vucevic coming in at $7,400 at that center position. Looking for 37 out of him to pay off at 5 times value. Currently averaging just over 35 so far in the season. Goes against the Orlando Magic. Once again, if you're into revenge game narratives, he did play for them once upon a time. So if you think there's any ill will in his heart or revenge to be had there, you could go that. I'm not a big revenge game narrative myself, but I do currently have him projected for 38 in this matchup, and he's had at least 37 points in 3 out of the last 5 games that he's played. And I do believe Jalen Smith's going to be out for Monday's contest, so there could be a couple additional minutes to be picked up there at the same time as well. So definitely like the potential upside of Nikolai Vucevic. And once again, like I mentioned on DraftKings, if Alex Sarr ends up missing, this pick's probably going to ultimately be Marvin Bagley as long as he's in that starting lineup for that Washington Wizards team. But we'll have to see as the day moves along. But with that being said, if you go with the 5 players that I do currently have listed here, you'll have $27,500 remaining, just under $6,900 remaining per player. So at least early on, looks a little bit like a balanced build type of day. Obviously, you could pay down for some cheaper players, pay up elsewhere. And if we ultimately end up with Marvin Bagley starting at center, that is quite a pay down from Nikolai Vucevic that could allow us to pay up from like Kawhi Leonard or Cooper Flag, which is something that could be beneficial for our lineups just in general. But we'll have to see what happens as the day moves along, especially with the 5 teams that are on back-to-backs. But with that being said, these are my core picks for both DraftKings and FanDuel for Monday, December 1st. As always, if you have any questions related to NBA DFS, be sure to drop them down in that comment section below, and I'll get back to you as quickly as possible. And then once again in the morning, I'll be listing my early morning injury report, and that will have the injury reports for the 13 teams that are not on back-to-backs. The final 5 teams that are on back-to-backs will have their injury reports posted later on in the day. And then I will also be posting my updated core about 20 to 30 minutes prior to lock. That will be left as a pinned comment. If there's no changes to the core at that point in time, we'll simply leave a pinned comment that says no changes to the core at this point in time. Although I will say that I do expect there to be quite a few changes as the day moves along. And then if there's any other additional changes after that point in time, we'll leave them as a reply to that pinned comment as well. And then I will also be posting as many of these starting lineups as I can get to throughout the evening down in that comment section. So definitely make sure that you are checking up down there so that you do have the most up-to-date and relevant information, especially as we do head into lock. But with that being said, if you are brand new to my channel, checking it out for the very first time, or have yet to subscribe, please consider doing so. Definitely would appreciate it. Helps to build the community that we're trying to build here at Coach Craig Sports, which is one that's truly for you, the viewers, helping you with your DFS. Right now we have NBA DFS in terms of the core pick videos, typically Monday through Friday. And then I do have my NFL DFS video coming out once a week, and that typically comes out on Friday or Saturday. Varies a little bit week to week just based on the rest of my schedule. And then last but not least, if you're interested in sports betting, if you're interested in prop betting, be sure to check out the links and promo codes down in the description below for BetUS and Prize Picks. If you are a brand new user to either one of those sites, when you sign up, make your initial deposit, you will get a first match deposit bonus. For Prize Picks, it's a 100% match up to $100. And then for BetUS, it's 125% match up to $2,000. So some pretty great opportunities to be had out there. If you have any other additional questions related to that whatsoever, feel free to reach out to me, whether that's down in the comment section of this video or on Twitter at Coach Craig Sport, and be more than happy to help you with that journey as well. But with that being said, that's all that I truly have for today's video. Definitely do appreciate each and every one of you tuning in. Definitely means a lot to me. I hope that each and every one of you have a great rest of your day and some pretty good luck in NBA DFS for Monday, December 1st.